if you're working in a DAW, then how loud your audio or your track in the end is does mean a lot. And therefore, I want to show some ways to increase or decrease the loudness of your tracks and clips and events in Cubase. So of course, there are some very obvious possibilities, for example, the fader, or also all of the processes that you apply to your audio or virtual instruments, like compression, of course, or even other tools like the envelope shaper down here, and of course your saturation tools will have the possibility to change the volume of your track. Even something as simple as applying an equalizer will either increase or decrease the volume of your audio material. But that's not what I meant. I want to show some ways how you can change the level of your track without using these plugins. The first one, at least the first one I want to take a look at, and also I think the first one in the effect chain would be in the pre section. So the pre section is to be found here in your channel editor window. So, and also you can find it here in your mixer. Therefore, you have to activate this rack, which is called the pre-rack. And if you open it, you will also find the pre-gain slider. So this gain slider here will either decrease or increase the volume of your whole track. And it is pre-fader, of course. It is also, if I remember correctly, pre-equalizer and pre-inserts and send effects, or pre-channel strip. If you use this pre-gain slider, then you won't see any gain changes here in your audio waveform. So you won't be hearing anything, because I prepared a track with some white noise so that we can see the effects here in our window, but since it's such an annoying sound, I just muted the output and you won't be hearing anything. But you also will see later that some effects will be visible here in the audio waveform. This effect won't be visible. So if I change the volume here, then you will see here on the right that the volume of the track will change drastically, because it's so a huge amount you can change here. Like below 50 it will just change to infinite, and therefore you won't be hearing anything anymore, or you can go to up to around 50 dB plus, and that is like a real big amount. The reason you probably should know about this is the process that has been talked about a lot lately, and that is the gain staging process. Some people say that since a lot of the plugins are made to match the original ones that exist in real life, you should gain stage your audio tracks for the best performance. So that means the plugins in real life work best at a certain level, and therefore the virtual plugins, so the software inside your computer, also works best at a certain level. And if you manage to find that level or produce that level on your track, then the plugins will work at their best performance. Some people also ignore that and still make great mixes. So I think you have to decide for yourself if you want to use this process or not. But just search for it. There's heaps of videos about gain staging, and some of you might find this information interesting. The next processes I want to show that influence the volume of your track or your audio clip, I want to show here in the project window. So the first process I want to show here in the project window is really simple. You see, every event has several handles, and these are, for example, to fade in and fade out, and also to shorten or lengthen it, or to duplicate it here, this button in the end. And also here on the top there is an handle for the clip gain, and if you drag it down you can already see the waveform changes, and this also you can see here in the middle a window pops up, and this window shows you how much you changed the gain right now, or if I go back to this process, how much it already has been changed. So right now if I click it, you see the first number says it has already been changed, like -4 point something, and right now that is the number in the back. I've changed it again plus 1.5. So that makes in the end a minus of 2.87. You can also see that this line is straight. That means for this whole event the volume change will be the same. And that is only for this event. You can also see if I change it over here, then it does not affect the other events. The next possibility is to change the volume of your events I want to show in the process list. There are some, and I think 3 of those are really simple to use and very common. You can find these in your audio and processes list. You can also click on an event and command right click it, then the processes will be available as well. The first one and very common one is the gain process. You can just here put in the amount of gain you want to change it, and what is really cool about this effect is that it will also give you an idea of how much the volume will change in percentage. So let's say I change it to 6 dB plus, that gives me about 200% of volume increase. And also what is interesting, it will say if my event will be clipping or not. So this event I created is not very loud, so I can use up to 20 dB, that equals 1000%, and there will be no clipping. So if I use that 200% 6 dB boost and I say do it, then you can see the waveform changed again, and it will be 200% as loud as it was before. That is good for you if you have an idea of how much you want to change and you already know that in your head, like you want to have that 2 or 5 or minus 3 decibel, or you have an idea that you want to say, well, I want it to change about 150%, then you can put this number in this process, and I think that's really helpful. The next process I want to show in this list is the normalizing process, and that works slightly different. If you use normalizing, then your computer will analyze your event, and then you can again put in a number here. Let's say -2, and then your computer will analyze your event and look for the loudest part inside this event, and that loudest part will then be -2 decibel at max, and everything else will change accordingly. So since I used white noise, all of my event is the same volume and there won't be some crazy clip that peaks out. But what you can see is that it changes the volume drastically. That is the volume it was before, and now you can see it has increased by a lot. And if I play back, then you can see at first it's very soft. That was the one where I used the handle. Then it will go to the next stage where I increase the gain with the process. Then it jumps up to exactly -2. That is the normalizing process that I just used. And then it goes back to the original one, which is also quite drastically softer than the other ones before. The next process in the list is the envelope. This process shows you also your event, and then you can create these dots and move them around and increase or decrease the volume. And you can already see, very small, but in the background there is your event, and it shows you at least a little bit of what this curve will do. Now the envelope that I just did draw in that window is applied to my audio event here, and you can see the volume changes accordingly to that curve that I did draw in the window before. You can do something like that also here in your project window. If you use your pen tool, and you hover over your event and you click inside, then a blue line appears, and every time you click somewhere, a white dot is put in on that line. And you can draw that line like the way you want to, and if you leave the pen tool, then you can still see this line now in gray. That means it is now inactive, so you can't change it with your normal mouse. But if you want to change it, just go back to your pen tool and it will become blue again, and you can apply changes. That is very helpful, for example, if you recorded a very dynamic instrument like brass or maybe a vocal line, and at one point it was super loud and you have an explosive volume change and you want to reduce that, then it's really easy and helpful to do so just by drawing in here. You can also see in the waveform that the changes you apply, you can already see in this event, and if you change your clip gain with the handle again, then you see it will change relative to each other. So the clip gain and the gain that you draw in are now working both at the same time. By the way, you can also draw this clip gain handle in the direction above the event, and that will give you a loudness boost.